Hello and welcome to PhD Positivity Hack Delivered by myself, Beata Young. I'm trying to see some action. I see some viewers already. Hello, lovely to see you, everybody. We are welcoming from sunny Valletta in Malta, small island in the Mediterranean. And we are joined today by Richard Friesen. My name is Beata Young. I'm the founder of Women on It community. And today we are going to talk about money. Richard is an established entrepreneur from San Francisco, and he's been on trading floors of multiple different exchanges. Hence, he's more than obliged to talk about money, because also his background is, his education is in psychology and neuroscience, and hence he's very, very ecstatic to talk about his new book that is coming. Welcome, Richard. I'm very pleased to see you. I hope you are going to inspire our viewers today how to talk about money and how not to be self-conscious about, well, maybe I'm asking for too much.
Well, thank you. Our relationship to money is often covered with all sorts of history, culture, beliefs, and even traumas from early on, how our parents acted around money, how our culture believes around it. And it's one of those subjects like sex that we just don't talk about. In other words, I don't meet somebody and say, well, how much do you make every year?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
So how can we have conversation about money? Or, there's been lots of talk about we have to be open about what we are earning, but not many people really feel very open about it. So just 2 years ago, there was a BBC scandal. We discussed it with Edna Trainer, who is an ex-BBC journalist, and it showed how much disparity there is between female and male colleagues. And the first question I would like to ask you, how can we talk about money, and why do we want to have conversation about money?
Well, if we have misunderstandings about money, if our relationship to money is filtered through beliefs that don't serve us, then that hobbles us for our life. Money can be thought about as this evil thing that corrupts everybody, but also at the same time, money provides safety. It provides security. It provides opportunities. It provides us a way to deliver the value or to really look at who we are and what we would like to do and who we would like to become. It's all tied up. So as long as we have subconscious or hidden or beliefs or absorb cultural norms around money that don't serve us very well, it hobbles us. And as a result, this can produce a lot of stress. In marriages, money is one of the biggest issues around stress and in relationships. So if we're able to look down to see what our beliefs, what our attitudes, what all the subconscious issues are, bring them up, accept them, to look at them with compassion, and then we can say, well, now what would I like? What would I like to believe that's going to enhance my life?
That's very interesting that you started with a very high note of comparing money to talk about sex. The discussion is rather uncomfortable, making us feeling uncomfortable. I was inspired by what Cindy Gallop, the sex tech innovator, said once. She said, when we talk about sex, we are not very open. And I think it's also relates to money. When we talk about sex, we are not very open, but actually talking about it should be ethical, part of the ethical structure, right?
Yes, and the ethical structure that has been laid down for us by our cultures sometimes doesn't serve us very well. So what is the ethical structure around money? And if we can come up with one, articulate it, uh, make it clear to ourselves, and make it conscious and intentional, and then we can provide rapport with our beliefs around money, our actions around money, and then we can integrate that into who we are. So bringing all that stuff up and having an ethic around money that fits who we are is really important. And I'm so glad you brought that up.
So, Rich, you also talk about about working with your mind, and that's something interesting because I gave a couple of speeches about how to hack your brain and actually manage to maneuver your way of thinking. So I'm interested about your latest book. If you could just brief us a little bit about what it is and what is the focus and why you came up with such a subject, conversations with money.
Well, we'll start with why I came up with it. And for most of my career, I've been on trading floors and been in the financial markets. And for a decade, I built a trading firm. And what was amazing is that some traders, you train them, you give them all the tools, everything they need, and you put them in a pit on the floor, and they just start making money consistently using the system. But other traders wouldn't. What was the difference? And for a long time, I thought it was, well, they needed more training. They needed more skills. They needed more practice. But the truth was, it was their mental attitude. It was their beliefs about themselves. And so as I became a coach for people around issues around money and wealth and success, it really became clearer that the problem is often not our skills or our knowledge, but is our belief about ourselves, a belief around money, and belief around wealth and success. And let me give you a story. We had some traders that weren't doing well, and so I brought in a hypnotherapist, and she worked with them. And for example, one trader discovered that he couldn't make more money than his father. He loved his father. He thought his father was wise and helpful, and he just was a wonderful dad. But his dad made $200,000 a year as an architect for most of his career. And when this trader hit $200,000, subconsciously, and I know this doesn't make any sense, but subconsciously he felt he would be disrespectful to his father if he made more than he did. It was completely out of his awareness. So as working with clients, what I've come to the conclusion is we have all these problems that I used to work on them resolving, but the biggest problem is we're not prepared for success. We're not prepared for wealth. We're not prepared mentally because our survival brain says, whoa, we don't know what's going to happen here. We better watch out. So what I've been working with in the book, and this, you asked why I came to it, is in the book I have a character, Joe. And Joe has all the beliefs around money that aren't very helpful to him. He has absorbed a lot of cultural norms that aren't very helpful to him. And he doesn't have the beliefs in himself or the worthiness in himself to be successful. So we bring in money, literally a character, Money, who is the personification of money, and he starts having conversations with Joe. And the book is called Conversations with Money. And during these conversations, Joe becomes clearer and clearer about the beliefs and the thoughts that aren't helpful to him. So we work through all the ones that almost everybody has. As a therapist, as I work with all these clients, I've got a huge database of the issues that really stop people from getting what they want. And so Joe, I dumped them all into poor Joe, the poor kid.
I guess it's better it's not Jane, right? And actually, it's interesting that you prefer to talk about men, because when we look at the consumer biggest force in consumer products. It's the females that 85% of them are purchasing, having the purchasing power. So why a male character?
Well, it's because I am a male and certainly relate to that. But so I brought in a superhero female, his girlfriend Julie, who in fact has clarity about her life. She has clarity about what she wants, and so she. Well, what can I say here? Well, so she has a real strong backbone, and she doesn't let Joe get away with any BS, and it's really confusing to him to
Excellent.
have a relationship with a woman who is clear about her own success, money, and wealth, and doesn't let Joe get away with his bullshit.
Excellent. So I am wondering what brought you to this field of well, at one point you were on the trading floor, but also at some point you were involved in technology. You created a patent. So how did your career evolve?
Well, I started out as a philosophy major in college, and then completed a master's degree in clinical psychology, and became a family and individual therapist. But I had a friend from college, Joe Ritchie, who founded Chicago Research and Trading, and he was doing silver arbitrage between Chicago and New York. He was doing the soybean meal crush arbitrage and doing very well. And he says, "Hey, come join us." But I didn't feel like I really was ready to step into that world. Rich Friesen, a philosophy major. So I decided to go to get my skills up. I went to Merrill Lynch, became a commodity broker, and learned a lot, and then went and joined CRT. And interesting story is they put me in the middle of the S&P 500 pit. Now the pits aren't like this anymore, but at that time there was like 500 screaming, almost all males, just high testosterone, just jungle, just eat or be eaten. It was just some of the most competitive, aggressive. I can't quite I can't get the words that describe how just challenging this was. And they put me in the middle of it. And of course, I didn't do very well. And after then, they started training me in options. And my trainer said, "Rich, you are the worst trainee I have ever had." So that was the start of my career in the financial markets. However, what saved me was persistence and resilience. And I said, I'm going to learn everything I can. And it was all new to me. Everything was different. The world of philosophy obviously faded into the background, and I had become a lot more aggressive. And I got another story about that sometime if we have time too.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward. So I'm actually interested because everybody, I think, remembers the very first day in the office when you start fresh and you think it's going to be hunky-dory and you make mistakes. And so the question is, because there is no bad answers, I would like to ask you, what was your funniest mistake, or the one that humbled you the most?
Oh my gosh. Oh boy. The first one that comes to mind was I opened a trading floor on the Pacific Exchange for CRT. I did manage to survive that initial assessment that I was the worst trainee. And I got a call from my manager. He says, "We want to sell a bunch of options in Stockcom Disco." So I went and I sold 20 options and came back and says, "Okay, I've sold 20. And he says, "No, we want to sell a lot." So okay. So I went back and I sold 100. And I got back and he says, "Just a minute." And I heard some talk in the background on the phone. And then Joe Ritchie, the founder of the firm, came on and he said, "Rich, should I give this order to a broker?" went back,
Uh,
sold. The premium
wow.
was really high in options. They were priced way too high, and I just sold everything. And
Wow.
two weeks later, there was $500,000 in our account from that. So it was, it's like this tentative guy, not fully appreciating the power of the research they did and the power of the capital they had. But I'll never forget that.
Well, I guess it's kind of you want to prove that you're gonna make it. Nobody believes in you, but you're gonna make it. You're gonna prove yourself, and good for you. So you talked about motivation with money and how people are getting motivated. And actually, I read a research that says that women are not motivated with money. And before we go into this question, I just wanted to thank you all for participation in this topic. And we welcome any questions. And I see first question coming from Olga, our most devoted viewer. So the question is again, why do you think women are not so motivated by money?
Boy, that's interesting question. And I'm not sure that it's totally true. What it, if I were to take a guess, it would be that men are more disassociated from the broader values of life. Women are more connected to really stronger values of relationships, family, if I just look at the women in my life, boy, they just make everything tick. They're the grease, in the wheels. They have a sense of what is really valuable. There's huge hormonal differences. Like in the pits, huge testosterone. You could smell it. You could smell the sweat. You could smell the aggressiveness. And so the differences between the two have very little to do with, I believe, the value that different genders can deliver. But I think that women have a broader sense of the bigger picture.
I actually, I think because I sense this is over and over. I've heard it over and over from my female colleagues. The sense of stability is major factor. The fact that they are coming to a stable job and they've got this job tomorrow and the next year, it's definitely contributes to their higher dedication to work. So the question, and actually I think I know this guy, and you know this guy, Patrick Young is asking, you mentioned the power of research, Rich. What is the best research for a new investor to learn from?
I think the best research is the one that goes into here. Most investors sell at the bottoms, they buy at the tops. The psychology of trading, the psychology of investing is just paramount. You can learn about everything, and most of the advice out there is wrong. And the best investments are the ones that are made when everybody else is selling. And the best time to get out is when the hubris and the beliefs and the exuberance is there and everybody else is buying. But to do that, you have to step back and be able to look at the whole emotional, the investment community, the beliefs around it, and say, what are the current beliefs in the system? What are the current beliefs in my head? So I think the best research you can start with is psychological. Research has shown that let's say the markets average 6 or 7% over a long period of time. The individual investor makes 2 or 3% of that. That our brains are not built to invest. Our brains are built to look at threats. Our brains are built to look at safety, like you brought up. And as a result, in the markets, you have to almost do the opposite of that. You have to look at the threats out there and look at them as opportunities, and look at when everybody is investing and the opportunity seems so great, is to look at it as a threat. Now, that takes a huge amount of internal resilience and internal awareness and personal confidence.
Definitely. And we are delving into more discussion, male versus female. We are all about community of women in technology and people underrepresented in technology. I just wanted to remind you, this is not a battle of sexes. This is how to make technology better. And can only be achieved when we've got an equal ratio of male and female. So our guy is actually asking a related question. We talked about the differences. So if these male-dominated pits are no more, does it mean that electronic markets are better for female traders?
Boy, is that a great observation. It completely takes that aggressive male jungle-like atmosphere out of the question. And the best traders that I've worked with are in fact female, because they don't, I mean, I just hate to stereotype because it just isn't true for everybody. But a tendency is for males for need to be right, to win, to dominate, to measure their self-worth in their trades. And those are all just devastating belief systems and devastating behaviors. Because once you have a need, once trading is a way to build your ego, then every tick against you or every investment that doesn't work out means that you're wrong and you're a bad person. Whereas some of the women that I've worked with, they're just interested in learning how to do it. And mistakes are not a referendum on who they are or their value as people. They're just learning opportunities. And from that standpoint, boy, that is a huge step ahead.
Oh, absolutely. So speaking about bias and some beliefs, Terry is actually mentioning, thank you, Terry. Women are taught that asking for money is wrong. The word gold digger has often been used as an insult. And,
yes.
And this is also another stereotype. We don't like to talk about money because it makes us feel uncomfortable. And actually, there is nothing wrong to talk about money with your relatives, with your friends. So why is there the sentence gold digger such a bad sentence?
Yeah. So what I do is in the book, Conversations with Money, and with my clients in the course I have coming up, Conversations with Money, we shift the name for money from money to certificates of appreciation. In other words, if I do a service for you and that service is worth more than the money that you give me, what I receive is a certificate of appreciation. When I'm delivering value to you or to anybody and they pay me for that, I'm receiving a certificate of appreciation. So if all the women stop thinking about money, but think about certificates of appreciation, wow, what a shift. The more money I have in the bank, the more certificates of appreciation I have, and the more I have done for the world. I have a client a female who 2 weeks ago was going to ask for a raise, and we reworked it to certificates of appreciation in her mind. And all of a sudden, she was freed up from asking for money, which felt like, just kind of a little dirty or gold digger or whatever, to all of a sudden I'm delivering a lot of value. I want to feel those certificates of appreciation. Now, from that mindset, when she walked into that office, her posture, her voice tone, Everything about her was different. And that changed the boss because he had a sense that this wasn't somebody, give me more money, but this is, I'm delivering value. I want certificates of appreciation. So it just changed the whole atmosphere. And in fact, she got a great raise.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Terry, for that question, actually, statement. One of the things I think is very important also is not being afraid of asking for certificates of appreciation, however you call it. And actually, when I think of the threats is, and I've noticed it so much happening in the modern world, in technology world, many people are asking for a service in exchange for, I'm going to mention your services because I'm a greatest influencer. How would you tackle that?
Okay, so what you're talking about is more relationships that don't have a direct commercial relationship, and how you manage that. Is that the question?
I rather say, it's very uneasy because, for example, one of my businesses I was dealing in, we formed a boutique hotel, and that was the beginning of the era of influencers, and I had some influencers asking for free stay in exchange for mentioning in a blog post, and it was really making me feeling uneasy because, I could do the same, but I don't think they would pay me for that, or they would offer me whatever services or marketing or social media stream to lift my name. So how do you actually kind of talk about money in a sensible way, but also say no in these circumstances?
Yeah. Well, you're bringing up a whole bunch of really interesting issues here, and one of them is our personal boundaries and the ability to say no. And again, I'm careful to stereotype, but it seems to be the case that women have a harder time saying no, that they are so eager to provide value, services. They look at the big picture. They want a lot of people to be happy. They see part of their job as making relationships work all over the place. So lots of great exercises around boundary settings. In a group that I belong to, one of the exercises, there's 50 or 75 people in a room standing around, and the men are instructed to ask for all sorts of things from the women, whatever they want. And the women are there to say no, not without an excuse. And it is so hard for many of them to say just no, thank you. They say no, maybe some other time. No, it's just hard to be really clear to set your boundaries. And so as a result, exercises around boundary settings are really important. And if we go a layer underneath that, then it becomes, I am valuable. I am valuable in and of it just by myself. I don't need you to authenticate who I am. And if you have that kind of a stance, then it's much easier to set your boundaries and really be clear about what you want. And sometimes when you set your boundaries and you go into an experience and you realize, oh, I didn't get it quite right, then sometimes it's, oh, I don't want to change. But it's absolutely okay to revise boundaries at any time, at any point. And this is important around money. It's important around sexuality. And it's important in the relationships to have that confidence in yourself to set boundaries.
Well, it's interesting you raised this topic because one observation I made early in my career as a mentor, whichever mentoring position I took, majority of them, of course, not paid for, majority of advisors were females because it's free of charge job. And so, for example, in Malta, there is a J Malta, which is entrepreneurship program. And strangely enough, there is less managers in many companies, but there female managers, but majority of mentors actually were managers of companies that were females. So that's an interesting observation. So now we are kind of delving about emotions, and we talked about sex, we talked about how uncomfortable it is. And you mentioned something that I had to dig deep into this topic. What is a suffering obligation of love? I've never heard of it, and actually, we don't associate love with business, with money. We don't mention love in business environments. So, can you tell us a little bit?
Sure. I mentioned the trader who couldn't make more than his father, a suffering obligation of love. When we do better than people we love, people in our community, all of a sudden we feel afraid that because of our need to be connected, that we're going to be excluded. So as a result, we will suffer, and with everyone else is suffering, because to not suffer when others around us are suffering is just unthinkable. So we have a suffering obligation of love. One story is a trader from Mexico. He had skill, he had talent, but he'd get to a certain point and he would stop making money. So we looked at it, and it turned out that his family had struggled so hard that if he were to make money easily without struggling, that it would mean that he didn't love or respect his ancestors. So we did a guided visualization, and we went back to his parents and asked them if it was okay if Manuel could be successful without struggle. And then we had the parent ask the grandfather and the grandfather, and it went clear back 10 generations before finally we got to the core, where in his belief systems, he had an ancestor, many ancestors back, that was struggling to keep the lion out of the cave, that was struggling to keep his family safe, and that struggle provided him with his reason to live, the whole reason to be. And so that belief system was handed down generation after generation. And in the guided visualization, Manuel asked this great-great-great-great-grandfather if it was okay for him to be successful without struggle. And the great-great-great-great-great-grandfather says, huh? Of course it is. I struggled so you don't have to. And so then they passed that word down through the generations until it got to Manuel. And he then was totally relieved. But the suffering obligation of love is that if we don't suffer like our parents, if we don't suffer like our mom, if we don't suffer like our dad, that means that their suffering was not needed, that it was a choice they made. And as a result, to not suffer ourselves is a condemnation of them. So as a result, we take on their suffering out of love, and we create a suffering obligation of love that keeps us from the success we want.
So you mentioned this example, which really brings the question of how much of our life can we control, and can we actually get out of these patterns and these ways of dealing with things? Is there a simple structure you could build?
Yeah. I have a concept called NEMS, neuro meta structures. And these are just connections in our brain, neurological connections of patterns, of beliefs, of behaviors. And in my work, what we do is we create an awareness of them. So it's what I call the golden keys. We are aware of all the patterns, the beliefs, the thoughts, the emotions, and we look at them from a little bit a higher level. The next typical reaction is the judger shelves. We shouldn't think that. We shouldn't believe that. That is negative thinking. Stop doing that. Which isn't very helpful. So next level is acceptance. So we're aware, then we accept what we discover with the understanding that all those behaviors, those patterns, those beliefs, those thoughts, that they have a positive intent for our lives. Now, they may be misguided in the sense that they were created when we didn't have many other options, and they just become habits in our lives. But nevertheless, they have a positive intent. So now we have awareness. We can see all this stuff that's going on. We accept it with compassion and a positive intent. And then we can say, and now what do I want? What do I want next? And as a result, then we can allow ourselves to have all these emotional turmoil in our lives or old patterns of behaviors and look at it from a higher place. And once we start looking at it from a higher place, eventually we can start making decisions from that higher place. And that takes some practice.
So do you practice? Do you yourself practice? Do you feel the need, or you're so good at controlling your brain you don't need to anymore? Is it a pattern for you?
I'm way up here, No. Absolutely. That I am in a continual state of discovery and delight. A couple weeks ago, I had an old behavior that just did not serve me well. It was around women and rejection. And it comes from being rejected by mom, and she was depressed, and we could go back into that. But I thought I was done with that. Oh, no way. Oh, no. I got triggered. And but what was interesting was I noticed myself start to go into this old pattern. Oh my God, my mom. Oh my God, this. Oh my God, that. Oh, Jesus, that means this. And I was going down. But this time it was different. I was watching. I was going, this is fascinating. Look what Rich is doing to just bring himself down. And then at the bottom of it, it was like, is life worth living? Oh my God. Oh. But I was watching it go, well, look at him. He's going down to the bottom of depression. Fascinating. So, so again, I think that if we can continually just observe ourselves with kindness and affection, we can eventually start to make decisions. Because from that place, watching myself go all the way down, I was now able to say, is that very helpful? Nah.
I think it's very relevant now during lockdown period, and actually I think we've got Laura joining us. Hello, Laura. Lovely to see you. That's a great reminder not to get triggered and be aware of the cause, especially given the uncertain times we are in at the moment and the financial impact we might experience. So definitely try not to have these cloudy moments and be in control.
Can I stop you right there?
Yes.
And make a language suggestion. If we try not to, what we're setting ourselves up is like this. I'm going to try not to. However, if we can say, I'm noticing I'm triggered. There's a positive intent of that. This is fascinating. Now, right away, what we're doing is rather than trying not to, we are including those parts of ourselves, and we're starting to gain rapport. So really pay attention whenever we use the word try. So thank you for the interruption.
Great. Well, I'm glad. I'm happy to be interrupted and be reminded that we are the community of doers, not triers. Right. And try or try not. There is no option. So definitely that's a great reminder. Thank you, Rich. And thank you, Laura. I would like to ask you about one of the questions that many female colleagues are asking. How do I ask for my pay rise?
Okay. Well, again, we touched on this a little bit, but it's all in your internal mindset. In other words, if you imagine, well, let's just look at a woman whose father was pretty abusive, who didn't feel very worthwhile, had to prove herself. Her mother was judgmental, so she was always judging herself to try to get ahead of her mother's judgments. She lacks confidence, and she goes in for a pay raise. Now, imagine another woman who knows she's delivering value and delights in delivering value to the company, to the customers, to whatever her job is. She loves the skills she has. She stands up straight, her shoulders are back, and she walks into the office knowing that there's a huge differential between the value she's delivering and the pay she's receiving. Now, those two mindsets are going to create a very different environment when she asks for the boss. Now, bosses are and executives are all fallible human beings. They might be threatened by a more powerful woman. They might appreciate it. But whatever it is, whatever the reaction is, that reaction can be handled much better from a position of a positive mindset. In other words, we really do a lot to create our environment. One of my concerns always is with my clients is if we need the outside environment to make us okay. If I need fairness and justice in the world to make me okay, if I need my boss to be non-sexist and in order for me to be okay, as long as we look for the world out there to make us okay, that puts us in a very powerless and victim position. So in my private coaching, I work, if people come in with a victim position, I need the outside to change so I'm okay. One of the first orders of business is to allow them to discover that they are okay in and of themselves. And it's not the outside world that makes them okay. It's not mommy, it's not daddy, it's not the boss, it's not the husband, it's not the wife. That they are okay themselves. I got a great exercise I do with this, and it's just can sometimes just be life-changing. So the attitude and our belief system on the inside when we go in to ask for the raise. And if we look at it as value delivered, as certificates of appreciation, and we look at the differential between the value we're delivering and the pay we're receiving, and we can do that without defensiveness, with confidence, what a difference that makes.
Absolutely. That's very good what you mentioned. Good exercise. But here is another one, and I actually heard it on one of the podcasts about how one woman attacked, well, let's call it attacked, the conversation about money, because she was going through recruitment process, and the second meeting was going to be negotiation about money, and she opened the negotiation by saying, I'm going to talk about money, and the research proves you're going to like me less, so let's get it aside and let's start talking about money. There is a research that shows that women are undervalued. How would you talk about the disparity in the office? How can women actually tackle this challenge?
Well, if we're looking at the cultural and systemic issues in cultural by the differences between men and women, how they're viewed, if we look at power structures that are traditionally mostly male, and we look at that is one issue, and that's a real issue. The issue that we can control is our own beliefs about ourselves. Now, if we, male, female, or whatever, if we look at an external structure out there and say that's responsible for my disparity of income, well, then again, that puts us in the victim role. If we look at ourselves as truly confident and capable, it changes the world around us. So I always look at what is our internal mindset and how does that create the world that we have. There's a question here. I see, my boyfriend, I fear, is jealous of me making more money. How can I talk with him? Oh my gosh, I love that question.
Excellent. Good. Off to you.
Yes, there's a quote by Marianne Williamson. I put it up on the screen here. Our deepest fear is that we're not inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? And just going down, is that we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. in other words, for us to hold ourselves back to make other people okay is not very helpful.
Mm.
So, if a boyfriend is jealous, then we can have a frank conversation. But the problem is not that you're making more than him. The problem is his own feelings of inadequacy. And for a lot of us men, we equate, and this, I mentioned this earlier, as traders or in business, we equate our self-worth with the amount of money we make. Oh my God, my girlfriend's making more than I am. I'm not worth as much. So this is an issue that, when brought up, I think can be a really tough issue. But getting down to the core of it, his own self-worth, I think, is where the value lies.
So what would be your advice? How to talk about it?
Mhm.
Because I think this is
Yeah,
the biggest fear that Ata is facing at the moment.
yeah. So my response in my own relationship, married relationship, is say, I notice that when we bring this up, and I'm going to make up this conversation, I notice that your head goes down, your stomach, and you kind of pull in here. Um, and he says, well, he gives some things about whatever he says. Well, okay, so what I'm hearing is, and repeating, just listening, repeating what they say. Did I get that right? Do I understand what's going on? Is this how you feel? So it's a listening conversation, and to really understand. And sometimes if somebody just hears and understands, that can really alleviate a lot of the situation. So rather than saying, being critical, start with active listening. And there's lots of books and videos on active listening where you're just repeating and understanding their state of mind, their thinking process, and you're really curious and interested in a non judgmental way. Once that is done, that can make huge shifts.
Excellent answer. Thank you so much. Definitely, it's nothing to wait for. It's best if you can talk about it right now rather than hide behind the curtain and wait for better times. And now, COVID, I think, is good for having these core conversation, the basic conversation. Definitely, that's the time to actually take everything from under the carpet. So you mentioned that you believe in the fact that our survival brain equates suffering to survival. So why does our survival brain equate suffering to survival?
Okay, so let's say we grew up struggling with money, and that our parents struggled with money, and money doesn't grow on trees, and money is hard to get, and the rich people are bad, and we've got to struggle to make money. So as you grew up with that belief, you know that you can survive it. Your parents survived it. You survived it. But wait a minute. Can we survive not struggling? Oh my gosh. The survival brain says, no, we know we can survive struggling, but if we don't struggle, we're going to be disappointed. We're going to, who knows what's going to happen? We could get hurt. We've never been there before. I have personal stories that I won't tell here about my own belief systems that were rather painful, but I knew that I could survive them. But I didn't know that I could survive getting what I wanted. It's weird. People don't believe me, but we stay in the struggles that we know that we can survive because our survival brain says, there, I know I can survive that. I can do this.
Hmm. Well, when it comes to survival, actually, when we talk about differences between females and males, I think women are more survivors, bigger survivors, and I've seen many women struggle through different different issues in life, and definitely came out stronger. And we talked about it before during our PhD Positivity Hack Delivered, of how we can make it through the block. And this is not the end of the world. When you lost your job, when everything falls down from the sky, there is tomorrow. So definitely look for the future. Now, Rich, I'm mindful of the fact that we are 10 minutes into end of our discussion. So I just wanted to ask our lovely audience to give us some how you got certificate of appreciation and thumbs up and a little bit of hearts. That definitely helps to keep our positivity going. And so I want to ask you your situation at the moment. How do you go through the lockdown? Is there anything that you would like to teach our audience? How you can make the best out of this situation?
Sure. What I love is working with clients and watching them unfold and grow and become more confident and love life, and just seeing that the changes that's made. Now, I've got a course coming up called Conversations with Money, and it's 8 sessions. It's starting, June 9, and runs for 8 sessions. We meet at the same time as this podcast on Tuesdays. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through all the major impediments that humans create to get in the road of making money and success. It's going to be a video course where we all have videos. It's required. We all get to know each other. We support each other, and we go through issues. Where there's assessments. We do online courses. There is what we call hot seat work, where we work with particular issues. And these groups in the past have been so supportive of each other, and they're from all over the world. My clients are from everywhere, and to have them all come together and work together to make the changes that make such a difference. So that's available, and that's coming up. So if anybody's interested, I can put in the chat box or give you the way to make a further connection.
Fantastic. But the question was more personal. How do you, apart from creating the course for your clients and for anybody interested, how do you cope? How did you start coping, or how did you prepare? Were you a prep maker? Did you make a big purchases and lots of toilet rolls?
Yeah, I saw the panic coming earlier, and so we stocked up on food and everything like that. My workshop, I have masks and all sorts of protective equipment and gloves anyway, so that wasn't the problem. But I work out of my house and have for a number of years, so not a lot have changed. The grandkids still come over, the kids come over, so not as a lot has changed for me personally. Financially, I've near the bottom of the market when it hit. I started accumulating a number of stocks and ETFs that I thought would be valuable, and those have turned out okay. Long-term preparation, what we're having is really hard to tell. Most likely we're going to see a long-term inflation, at least in the United States, and so I'm gearing my retirement funds and long-term investments in that direction.
So Terry is definitely interested in, just to let you know, Terry, who asked us a question, is very interested in your in your course. So she's asking to be sent details, sure. And we're gonna definitely post it at the end of the stream today. Thank you very much. I just wanted to ask you a fun question that I always ask my lovely guests, which is, imagine the lockdown is over, and you can have a private breakfast with anybody in the world, anywhere in the world. Who would it be, and where would you go?
Oh my gosh! Limited it to one person. I'd want to talk to a whole bunch of politicians and shake them. Probably historically, Alexis de Tocqueville, who did 1800s, traveled America and learned about what is America, and wrote a number of things around morality and free markets. Just a wonderful mind. But there's a dozen people behind that also.
Fantastic. Richard, and final question. I'm mindful of the fact that we are running out of time, but this is also one of the issues we discussed with Laura, who's joined us today in the show, but we discussed the topic of investment and how it is difficult for female founders to get investors on their projects. So I was wondering, would there be any advice how to ask for big money? Because usually the majority of women ask for a smaller amount just to get something to start.
I help teach a class at UC Berkeley here in California on entrepreneurship and fundraising. So that's a real complex issue, and there's a lot of pieces for that. But again, if we look at certificates, the investment, it's a certificate of appreciation. We look at the value we're delivering. We look at our own mindset. And then there is skill, some real skills and knowledge needed to ask for money and ask for big money and who you're asking. So that's a wonderful question. And gosh, I'd love to spend an hour talking about that, but it's not on. I think that's a bigger question.
Oh, fantastic. I'm mindful of the fact that you want these women to be to buy your book, Conversation with Money, coming soon. When is it the release plan?
Yeah, I'm in the third revision now. And if in fact, if anybody wants to help edit it or look at it or provide feedback, I'd love to have that. I can I'll give you here. I don't know if you can post those, but people can reach me at that email address, rich@mindmuscles.com, or there's a couple of links to either the book or to the course that's coming up June 9th. So if you want to put those in for everybody, then they can have a link to it. And I'm always open for emails or conversations to learn about how I can serve you better.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Richard. It's been a pleasure to have you talk about money and have this unique conversation, three-layered conversation. You're the first male on my panel. So, and the first time we actually had money or certificate of appreciation discussion. And I'm very, very grateful for your time, because time is money, and definitely I felt privileged to have you on the show, and our audience as well. There is lots of discussion going on behind the scene, so I will definitely post the links. I will post also Richard's contact details, and you're also available on LinkedIn, if I remember. So definitely people can get to you, Rich, and get that mind set going, or as you call it, mind muscle energy going, because we are so conscious, absolutely, we are so conscious of having physical strength, and somehow we are forgetting about our mental health. That is an issue quite often. Yeah. So thank you very much, everyone. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show. It's been a pleasure to have our beautiful community, and I would like to invite you for next Wednesday, Positivity Hack Delivered by our next guest. Thank you, Rich. Have a lovely day in life and the markets, and let's hack the future.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Enjoy yourselves.